Told you I'd finish it. So recently I've been seeing a lot of videos popping up on YouTube concerning the nature of trading card games and in particular their monetization. However, a lot of these videos I find fall into so many of the same traps. The most common one is the usual one, comparing the games to gacha games and loot boxes, which again, the only people who want that comparison to happen are the folks selling loot boxes, where they charge you money to essentially let you borrow something that they can take away with a snap of their fingers. I mean, think about it, Hasbro still gets crap for the one time it confiscated a permanent collection, meanwhile the 100 plus gacha games that shut down that exact same year, taking all of their players' collections and their money with them, generate nary a peep today. Sadly, a lot of these videos have been suckered into that logic, willingly portraying trading card games as solitary experiences where you have no choice but to crack pack after pack after pack to get what you want. Not to stress this point again, but did these video creators remember what the T in TCG stands for? Heck, I saw one that had a title that was something like, "How predatory do trading card games have to be?" Which is straight up a loaded question based on the assumption that trading card games are inherently predatory. I mean, this title might have been excused if it was a rhetorical question, but the video goes on to pursue it in earnest and... ugh. Also, I gotta say, putting free-to-play games at this other end of the list like some sort of paragon despite everything we know about how those things work? Woof. The discussions on the subject have been flawed and frustrated and short-sighted, and I couldn't be happier that they are happening. Because while I don't think a lot of people understand why, there is absolutely a sickness in the trading card game space that was not there before. There's a reason why so much of the experience just isn't as fun as it used to be. But I think I, as someone who has seen the top of the mountain of what these kinds of games can be, can do a good job of explaining why TCGs have become so unfulfilling. Put simply, it has become less about playing and more about having. So, some of you might be familiar with blind box collectibles. These are, for the most part, pretty lackluster toys that are shuffled around, put into opaque boxes, and given labels to find the rare ones. Ooh, they are quite the plague right now, and even though most people would decide whether or not to buy one only if they would enjoy whatever they got inside, there are those who obsess over getting the special rare ones even though they are, again, honestly pretty mundane toys whose only implied value is their scarcity. This was the start of the blind box unboxing video trend that was all over YouTube for a few years, where it was clear that more money and materials had been put into the packaging than the actual toys themselves. I mean, do you really need a 2-liter bottle with a spring-loaded lid for a 6-inch doll? I guarantee you that more than tripled the price. This unboxing trend inevitably made its way into trading card games, where pack openings are now a huge thing across social media, with people skipping all of the other cards to shriek like banshees at the shiny cardboard in the back. What have we got? Oh! Hey, that doesn't count. That reaction was a combination of getting a character I liked and it being a Bambino level called shots. So, pretty straightforward. It's one card. I hope it's Metal Seedramon. Let's see what we get. Okay. Here it is. What have we got? Oh! And I mean, this is a 50-cent card for crying out loud. The weird thing is that it's turned into this sort of expectation. People still give me grief over pulling this super de-duper rare Sylvie card from my starter deck and not immediately whizzing my pants over it. Oh no. Guys, don't do this. Don't make cards like this. I am unhappy about it. Unhappy that such an exploitative rarity like this even exists. Oh, but what if a new player pulls that super rare? That's cool, right? The comment section is no doubt saying, and no, that kind of declaration is pretty obviously playing dumb to what this rarity was designed to do. Its intention is to take the people who like the character and put them in a position where they have to buy starter deck after starter deck after starter deck to get the card they like, because the resale value of this Sylvie is... whew. And unlike other cards at super high rarities, this isn't like the natural side effect of buying lots of booster packs, because you're not really supposed to buy huge numbers of starter decks. You'll only ever need like 1 or 2 maximum, which is why I don't like this particular starter deck chase rare, because of the corrupting influence it has on the product. And believe me, I understand the sensation you feel from pulling a rare card, that it's some sort of accomplishment for doing so, and getting the card some other way just wouldn't be that same sort of special. But let me ask you, if all you are doing is buying packs seeking that high, then you're not really into this game to play it, now are you? Unless, of course, that's what the quote-unquote game was aiming for all along. This sort of rare chasing, pack opening, skipping to the final card social media nonsense is, I would say, one of the clearest symptoms of the corrupting influence on the card game market right now. And we have so many companies that are willing to profit off of that. Between Konami bumping the rarities of popular cards in Japan, to Magic the Gathering's 10 bajillion different variants, to VCard and the MetaZoo remake, yes, that is real, I can't believe it either, launching without any sort of starter deck product whatsoever. It is no longer about the playing, it is about the having. And this connected obsession with the monetary value of cards has turned the art of trading near extinct, changing from cards with a vague valuation that can be freely exchanged into nickel and diming so severe that a trade can break down over a 50-cent disparity due to this perverse belief that there cannot be such a thing as a mutual beneficial arrangement. Only winners and suckers, and everybody trying to always get the better end of the deal. There's a reason I put a name to the sort of person who corrupts hobbies with a monetary focus. It's easier to call it out when it happens. I mean, every member of the player taxonomy has its light and dark versions. For example, the Spike who adds cheating to their repertoire for achieving their goal of winning. And while I have my platonic ideal of the Jimothy being the sort to ride monetary incentives to keep the most in-demand cards in circulation, I will admit that it seems like most of the Jimothys we encounter these days are instead all about pricing people out of the hobby with extremely high secondary market prices, withholding the cards rather than keeping them flowing. And come on, the cards must flow, my dude. What kind of line is that? The cards must flow. Apparently, I'm old-fashioned for thinking that cards should be played with. It's resulted in basically a complete breakdown of how a game is designed, where commons are no longer plentiful foundational cards, but instead trash to be ignored and thrown away. Where your booster box quote-unquote lost money if you got secret rare number 1 instead of secret rare number 2, regardless of the stuff found in the rest of it. Now, not a lot of you might know this, but the Yu-Gi-Oh! Secret rares used to actually be just straight-up novelty cards, right? Cards that had the role of being rare rather than being important and viable. And I have heard plenty of complaints about how Magic the Gathering's new play boosters, which are trying to imitate the unusual rarity structure of loot boxes where it can fluctuate from pack to pack, has apparently soured sealed and draft play, the bread and butter format of so many local game stores thanks to the inherent product sales involved. I mean, I can't be the only one tired of watching the Magic professor complain about how unbalanced and exploitative the game has gotten, and in the same breath boasting about how he opened a totally awesome booster box, you guys. It's honestly kinda sad to watch. And it feels like the only major game that remembers that cards exist to be played with is Pokemon, which, even though it has added the mythic rarity, and there are absolutely issues of power creep, where 1 energy 140 damage attacks are seen as too slow, it still has loads of foundational commons and staple uncommons, and it's rare that a card belongs in multiple decks that are printed higher than rare, unless it's a card where you literally only need 1 copy. It leverages this against the collectible angle by having rare and special treatments for their most powerful or popular cards. The big problem right now is how many quote-unquote games are simply cash grab collectibles wearing the trading card game title as a form of prestige. VCard, the Game by Gamer sups, fits this description to a T, between its complete lack of any playable starting product and the total absence that is the depth of its gameplay. So, what is really the answer here? Like I've said before, there is no shame in wanting to make money with something you have created. I am not saying that you should not put a price on what you make or even deploy a system where certain cards are scarce and desirable. The real question is, what is the difference between fun variety and exploitation? Because as flawed a concept as this video over here was, they were at least onto something. For example, even blind boxes themselves have ways that savvy collectors can sort of bypass the randomness. You can feel around for the contents of soft-packed collectibles, others can be generally judged by weight, and some companies like LEGO and Games Workshop include special codes on the boxes that reveal what figure is inside of them. Funny story, I found this Pearl collectible by, and I kid you not, pulling up information on how the cartons were arranged to pick the proper box. Blind boxes whose randomness can be defeated or at least eased with a combination of creativity and research are, to me, a big part of the fun of blind boxes, and I always applaud the ones that allow their systems to be defeated like this. As for how trading card games can do it, well, while Pokemon's model is commendable, it doesn't necessarily work for a lot of card games unless the subject matter is as popular as the special cards being used. A full art card of Dingus McGilroy isn't gonna draw any eyes if nobody knows who Dingus McGilroy is. But I do think Pokemon has a pretty stable design. Getting the actual pieces for a deck are generally not very difficult with how flooded the secondary market is, rarely running into the double digits, and generally that's only for cards that require only one copy. These are meant to be leveraged against the premium rarities such as full art and illustration, which the collectors are more keen to acquire. This has given Pokemon a reputation for being incredibly approachable. Contrast this with the other two members of the Big Three. When it comes to alternative printings, Magic the Gathering has gone certifiably insane, giving cards in some cases over a dozen alternate printings, including like 3 different frames and serialized cards and incredibly sparse reprints of cards that the people actually want. It's a nightmare. And speaking of sparse printings, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is extremely guilty of this, upping the rarity of staple cards to the point that a card whose effect is this short becomes a $300 playset. Those are both examples of things going out of control. So what is this platonic ideal I spoke about before? What sort of system brings balance to the force? Well, I made a whole iceberg about it. The short version, each rarity should have a distinct role rather than being a measure of desirability, and the upper rarities are saved instead for the more complex cards and deck capstones, with the other cogs that rely on this capstone hanging out at the lower rungs. Super McAwesome Ultra Dragon belongs at top rarity. Bonfire does not. Although something I did not go over in that video is the ratios of these sorts of cards in any given set, because I have seen some really bad games where the sets have more cards at rare than every lower rarity combined. It is some of the most money-grubbing, third-rate game design I have ever seen. A way to artificially rarefy cards that has the effect of genuinely destroying the value of lesser rarities and the box opening experience as a whole, let alone the process of getting enough copies of these cards to actually play. It is yet another result of this TCG nightmare where the having is valued more than the idea that these are game pieces that you know, are supposed to use to play actual games, where gameplay itself is obsolete in the face of sheer hype and monetization. So how do we fight back? By demanding games that release in a playable state, by forcing at least a little effort in the realm of the design of entry product, by rejecting all of the bland pitches full of bog-standard corpo speak that tell us absolutely nothing about the game itself. If your game is supposed to be fun, tell us why it's fun! But most of all, you should talk down the people who are clearly swept up in the hype and nothing else. It's becoming like NFTs and cryptocurrency and what have you, where it's showed less for its actual function and more for its quote-unquote investment potential. Wait, that's the real problem, isn't it? Yeah, a lot of people have been oddly convinced that buying into trading card games is a ticket to instant wealth, and I'm here to tell you, it isn't. It wasn't the case with NFTs, it wasn't the case with comic books, it wasn't the case with coins, it wasn't the case with tulips. In this case, it really is a case of winners and suckers. And way too many games are more than happy to cash in on it. Odds are more likely that you might do a little better than breaking even on any given booster box, but that does mean putting in the legwork to sell all of the cards yourself, all of them, at their current market value. It is not a get-rich-quick scheme. The idea that certain cards and products are worth a ton of money is not an inherent part of the system itself, but in modern times is an offshoot of modern investment bro culture. Same with retro video games and other nonsense. I mean, I remember a time when Black Lotus, an alpha Black Lotus, was like $500, and that was considered on the high end. The problem, I'd say, is all of the card games that are, on their end, treating this whole phenomenon as a feature rather than a bug. That said, I still do not think that there is a problem with having some products that are a bit rare and exclusive. Just make sure that such a thing isn't the central thrust of a new idea, like it seems to be increasingly so if the amount of AI-generated garbage that keeps flooding my inbox is any indication. Demand gameplay. Demand depth. Demand accessibility. Stop fixating on the money, because odds are good you're going to be the one holding the bag with rug burns all over your knees. Until next time, this is Kodak signing off.